Namaste and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology, Debunking Mythology. Sat means truth, Logos means a study or science, Sattology means the science of truth, a study of truth. You should never call Vedic literatures as mythology anytime because we have proofs. I myself proved in 4 of my books, and today the guest who is coming has written forward in all my books, most of my books. And so we should never call Vedic literatures as mythology because we have proved it. Ramayana is global spread. We have proved it. Mahabharata is global spread. Mythology means myth is a Sanskrit word which means fake lie, imagination. Where many Hindi words or Marathi words and other languages in India, they come from myth dhatu. Mythology means a study or science of fake lie or imagination. The Western academics fail to call their own history as mythology while branding everybody else's mythology. So we created this new term. We say Vedic literatures are Sattology and your history is mythology. And isms have been the biggest disease on the planet. Isms. I just tell you one example. They try to divide the followers of Sanatan Dharma into Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Jainism, but actually Sanatan Dharma is just one. And there were no divisions. In the ashram of Shukracharya, all kinds of people live, including people who do not worship a particular deva. Even they live there. So it was never part of the Indian society to divide people based on their objects of faith. So today I have a very, very special guest, a very famous person in India, the author of RSS 360 and also a PhD on RSS, which is a very famous organization. And also he has been guiding many people, and he gives me a lot of political insights also, because I'm not very well versed in politics, and especially for India, we don't know. So let us welcome Sri Ratan Sharda.
Namaskar.
Dr. Ratan Sharda.
Aditya.
Namaste, welcome. Ratanji, today is a very wonderful, I think it's one of the first time any Prime Minister of India has recognized the horrors of partition. And that too coming directly from, and I think of it, I'll connect it to the natives, because Hindus are the natives of that land on both sides of the border. And the border was created by the British. And I think it's a big recognition to the rights, human rights of the natives. What is your view on that, sir? We'll start from there.
I think it's a wonderful announcement by the Prime Minister, because we in India have been living in negation of the violence against our people, right from the earliest invaders of 6th century to the last biggest Holocaust that we faced, that is partition. And that was true of the west side of Bharat, that is West Pakistan, also the east side of Bharat, that was the East Pakistan at that time, Bangladesh. So this genocide of people, right from the direct action 1946 to earlier Mopla killings in 1921 in the name of Khilafat, and later on during the partition, we have tried to whitewash those violent dissidents, saying both sides committed this violence, which is not true. It was much more heavier on the Pakistan side, and what happened in India was only retaliation, and that too was stopped in time. And it was unprovoked massacre of people in the name of their holy land of the Pakistanis. And it was uncalled for, because both the sides agreed that they will protect the minorities. Never happened. Dr. Ambedkar talked about transfer of population to solve the problem once for all. That was also not agreed on. So this, and not only that, while when the newly formed Pakistan, Hindus were thrown out, killed, raped, maimed, pillaged, looted, and the trains filled with killed women, raped women and children were sent to India with very provocative notes on them. And that is when the Indian people got enraged, and that is when the retaliation happened. But to say that out of 1 million people killed, it was an equal kind of behavior, it was not true, because Hindus by nature are not violent. By nature, they are not intolerant. If that had happened, then Pakistan would have never taken place, and street fights would have erupted everywhere. It didn't happen. Even in 1946 direct action, when nearly 10,000 Bengali Hindus were killed, there was hardly any retaliation. There was a defense action, by which time the governments came in, they stopped that also. But the violence stopped because the local Hindu groups stood up and fought against violence. To I recognize those millions of people who died and are still suffering due to partition is a huge service to Bharatiyas by Mr. Modi, and we must compliment him for recognizing this genocide, for recognizing the Holocaust, because that leads you back to history of thousands of hundreds of years when this happened, and to recognize the innate rights of people who were orphaned by the partition was the duty of the government of the day. It was not done, now it is being done. So it's a part of history, now it will remain a part of the history, and we cannot whitewash it.
No, very few countries, have taken the bold step of recognizing the rights of the natives. Oftentimes, the invaders write the history, and they write it from their own perspective. You correctly said that India has been invaded, and the defensive action is not offensive. So somewhere the world law needs to change, where the aggressors need to be also their name should be named actually.
Yes.
So you wanted to add something there?
Let us see, in the name of so-called political correctness, we have tried to negate the history as Conant has put it, the issue of negation is the biggest bane of Hindus. Right from beginning, when people is sitting in USA decide that people who attacked India like Turks and Mughals were only serving the people of India by liberating them from oppressive Hindus, and there was something called indigenous people being oppressed, and there was some caste system which was pulling down the entire society. These kind of excuses for the huge violence perpetrated by, especially by Mughals, including Aurangzeb, to tell them he was a benign king, and it's kind of insult to the people of India. So that must be recognized, and so the correct history must be written. The history is already written, in fact, by own historians of the Islamic invaders, Turkic invaders, and Mughals, and also by the Indian historians before they were whitewashed and thrown out of the library windows by the newborn Marxist historians. So this whitewashing of, because see, you can reconcile only if you take up what was done was wrong. If you try to whitewash what was done wrong, then you cannot really reconcile. People in the world have reconciled. British and French have reconciled. Russians have reconciled. Communists have reconciled. US has reconciled to some extent. So when you reconcile and agree that there was some violence, there was injustice to people, only then there is a reconciliation possible. You cannot have a reconciliation by hiding the fact, by hiding a sore wounds of the civilization. That cannot happen, because sooner or later truth will come out and bitterness will remain. That is the problem with our Indian history.
You correctly said, because the oppression or the any kind of violent action against one member of one family stays in that generation for 7 to 10 generations. People don't forget it. It's in the genes then after that. And
See, forget generations. Aditya ji, we have got folklores, folk songs, which go back to 1,000 years. It is not just a year, 10 generations. It is that continuously these stories are remembered by the folk people, the rural people in their folk songs. And that is how history has survived in India, despite all the efforts by British and later by the lackeys in India who have tried to distort and whitewash the history. So people's memory is something which cannot kill, that stays. After all, even Vedas were recited orally. And so we have a pure form of Veda, living Veda, living our religious texts and dharmic texts since time immemorial, at least 6,000 years, as per records of West also. Forget what we say or what we are trying to prove, but even by every record, it is at least 6,000 to 7,000 year old. That was carried orally by our people. So a very strong oral recall of history of our knowledge that cannot be taken away.
No, very well said, Ratanji. And one of the things, 1919, Afghanistan was taken away, and most of the Afghanistan was the natives of India, Hindus.
They were part of Mahabharata.
Part of Mahabharata, that's right.
Thousands of years back, these are the places Mahabharata was connected. In India, we have the Mahabharata starting from Kandhar, from time of Gandhari, her name was Gandhari because she was born in Gandhar, but is now called Kandahar. So from that end of Bharat, to the other end of northeast in a region where in it was called Pragjyotish, which is Assam, and we have Krishna marrying to Rukmini in Assam. We have Idumishmi tribes. We have got Tripura, which has written history of having fought in Mahabharata. We have in South history written which has kings fighting in Mahabharata. So that vast history, right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gandhar or Kandahar today to Pragjyotish or Assam to the other end to Manipur and Tripura, that is mind-boggling, which we don't even appreciate.
And also the Mahabharata and Ramayana both maintain that the Uttar Kuru started from Shadoba Nadi, which is Sardyaj in Kyrgyzstan. That they both
Yes,
maintain.
yes,
And also, and I've documented that in my books also, in both the books. And on the east, when we say Burma, that was 1948, they actually wanted to join India. British did not allow
yes,
them. Sanskrit is called Brahmadesh. They had
yes.
maximum Brahma temples and Buddhist temples.
Thailand was called Siam.
Yes, right.
So Siam was also the old name of Thailand. So this and Hindu thought and culture collected on the land right up to Vietnam and Cambodia, it was called Cambodge, now Cambodia. These are a part of history. So but it is not to claim what is already gone. It is at least now we should see to it that there is no more dismemberment of Bharat. That is the key. And that will happen only if you remember history correctly and if only recall our history. To say what was written for thousands of years is all myth. That itself tells us that we are simply refusing to test those texts on the scientific basis, which is very much possible today. A lot of it is coming out. It was said Saraswati River never existed. And now there is enough proof of Saraswati. Now we know it is Indus Saraswati civilization, not the Indus civilization. There was nobody who came and pushed people out from there. It was Saraswati getting dried up. That too about 3,000 years back. That 4,000 years back. That is when the people moved from that to Gangetic plains and other parts of Bharat because Saraswati are no more able to support them. These are all historical scientific facts now.
See, you mentioned Mahabharata, and then Mahabharata was spoken in Takshila. By first time, Vaishampayan to
Yes,
Janmajay was spoken in
yes,
Takshila, which is in Gilgit Baltistan, which is still the official part of India. And
yeah.
officially, that is still the part of India. And so the natives of Pakistan, just because they have changed their faith due to invasion or coercion and all those things, but still there are people in Pakistan which still practice the faith which was the original faith. There are millions, at least only 2 million left now. During 1947 there were 21% of the population, and today there are less than 1% or 2%, but still continuously the attacks happen on the natives in Pakistan. Anyone who belongs to the original faith of Pakistan, the attacks happen. So I think this proclamation of partition is very important also from that perspective of recognizing the atrocities on the natives, which are the Buddhists, Hindus, which are
See, it is similar to what happened in Kashmir in 1990. So the nature of the invaders has not changed. It is for us to be strong enough to see to it that we live peacefully with this kind of thinking, and we see to it that it doesn't keep on repeating.
see one of the things Dr. Ratan Sharda ji, where I would like to ask you is that there are no museums made on the ancient culture of Pakistan yet. No museums, no documentation by the modern historians to correct the past history has not yet been done. Do you think that should be done, or there are already plans of doing it right now?
You are talking of Pakistan,
Yes,
not India.
Pakistan,
See,
yes.
in Pakistan, their history starts from Muhammad bin Qasim. It's very funny that you celebrate a person who forcibly converted you on the sword, who killed and raped your people, and who actually pillaged the entire region and that forced many of them to become Muslims. You are celebrating that invader. You are not celebrating the original root civilization that you have. And luckily for them, Mohenjo-daro, Takshila, these are part of today's Pakistan. There are some intellectuals who are trying to now get, recognize their roots, because they are rootless otherwise. To believe that the world started 600 BC, 600 AD, and not earlier, first of all, it's blindness. Second, it's myopic to say that we were only people when Muhammad Qasim bin Qasim came. Before, there was no civilization, because they had a huge, wonderful civilization just like us, because they're part of Bharat. And then now, because of that, it is very difficult for them to remain united. So the reason they have broken up, the reason they are about to break, I would say, if not sooner than later, because they have negated their roots. They believe that one religion which has oppressed all other regions within the geography called Pakistan will save that. It will not, because you have to recognize your roots. You have to recognize what unites you. So if that happens, that will be good for Pakistan, that it might survive. Then it will understand the other people of the Pakistan who are also part of the same nation, artificially created though, which is Pashtuns or Balochis or Sindhi people and Punjabis. But Pakistan is not Punjab. You cannot, one region cannot control all other regions in the name of religion. That will not happen. There is no more, it is no more possible. So many scholars trying to recognize its roots of Harappan civilization or Indo-Saraswati civilization, it is only good for them. They might survive, because that will be the uniting thread. But then danger is that will also connect them to Bharat, which they don't want to. So this is like refusing your parentage, refusing your kins, refusing your blood, and saying I am different, and then die out of that desperation. This negation of their own roots is going to implode them.
So one of the Pakistani American associations, I asked them in the US, where are Pakistani Hindus in your association? They're not a single Pakistani Hindu. Otherwise, there are around 200,000 Pakistani Hindus in this country, around 200,000. And another aspect which I would like to ask you is that in the partition, you already covered that. If you see after the partition, just like when you cut a branch from the root, it dries out and destroys itself. The same thing we have seen in Afghanistan. We have seen in Afghanistan was a very rich country until it was connected to India. Kabul was considered the center of trade, actually. And there are more than 7,000 Hindu temples in Kabul in 900 AD. This is very recent. And in Pakistan also, when it was connected to India, it was very rich land. Bangladesh was literally the most opulent part of India. Because of Calcutta being the capital, and most of the trade used to flow from there.
No, Aditya ji, just to correct you, Dhaka has the most refined malmal in the world. And it was exported, it was heavily in demand, and finally they had to put ban and put penalty of custom duty and make it a crime to wear Dhaka malmal, because they were going bankrupt. It is not just spices from south that force them to transfer their wealth, but also textiles from place like Dhaka. So Dhaka was a rich place. It was the port at that time. Calcutta developed later on. So but the skills of Dhaka malmal, and it is said there are many wonderful stories about it. In fact, the count of Dhaka malmal 620. Currently, it is just hardly 120 count is done for cotton textiles. So that was the strength of, and it was said that the whole, the 100 meters could pass through a ring on a finger. That is the quality of textiles that was being exported. That was one. And when you talk about the prosperity, West Punjab, which remained in Pakistan, was actually the most productive and fertile area. East Punjab, which is now with Bharat, was not fertile. It was not well nourished by the rivers, and that was the wealthiest area. And the wealthiest Bharatiyas stayed there. Wealthiest and the best culture was there. Best temples, wealth was there, which they have pillaged and they're destroyed because of their blindness of looking at everything through the mirror of religion, and that too in a very intolerant manner. So Karachi was one of the biggest trading states. There was no Mumbai at that time. So Dhaka, Karachi, Lahore, Peshawar, right up to Kandahar, these were the areas which are really wealthy due to trade, due to their skills, and of course South, due to their inherent massive skill in metallurgy, in arts, science, in all fields. In fact, the surgery, the medical knowledge came from Takshila, from the same part, because that was the really most civilized and most populated, most industrialized and agriculturally successful areas. And as I said, on the east side, you had similar things in Bengal area. Odisha was the biggest port. It was the maritime center of eastern side. So this entire belt was doing wonderfully well. As you know, India was contributing about 23% of GDP, world GDP, till 1850s. After that, it dropped.
See, in Ramayana, the description, the word Rakshas is the one who destroys the land. That is also one of the meaning of that place. The Rakshas means it destroys the land. We have seen destruction of people's identity. And now people are fighting again in Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and people are fighting for their rights and their identity. In India, on the other hand, a very good integration has happened. Like if you look at, even though the states were made to promote the local languages, which is a very good thing, to retain the cultural ethos of local people, we have seen Pakistan and Bangladesh and Afghanistan, the complete destruction has happened. There is no local language. Look at Persia, the entire Zoroastrianism against the campaign. Even today, there is Zoroastrian culture, Zoroastrian language, Zoroastrian songs. Their textbooks are not promoted by Iran. And which was in Mahabharata, the entire area was called Parsi. Parsi is a word in Mahabharata actually. So that's why the Greeks call it Persia. So do you think the one book culture, one book syndrome imported from Arabic invaders has actually destroyed the rights of natives in all these three lands? In other countries also, and I'll come to the Europe also on this.
As you rightly said, the problem, the why India has survived and thrived and people have stayed together and amalgamated together was that we enjoy diversity. We don't say that we should have a monochromatic black and white world where people who are with me are white, everybody is black, and I must impose uniformity. That idea of imposing uniformity comes from the Western worldview and the Islamic worldview. Or rather, Western, I say it actually basically means church promoted worldview, where you say anything that goes against me is not with me, so they must fall in uniform, they must have uniformity like us. And so impose a culture, you impose your religion of people, and otherwise you say these are heathen, these are pagans, these are non-believers, kafirs, whatever. So this speciality of India, having hundreds of regions, hundreds of customs, hundreds of cultures, all connected through their cultural roots, the Hindu roots, and celebrating them wonderfully, whether same Dashera is celebrated in Northeast or in Gujarat or in South or in North, celebrated differently, but same thing. So that is same for spirituality, that is same for linguistics. So we enjoy, we celebrate cuisine, we enjoy our different languages, and we don't impose anything on others. So this idea of celebrating the diversity, that is the real beauty of the unity that India has built, vis-a-vis the uniformity imposed, tried to be imposed on Afghanistan or Pakistan, where you end up trying to suppress the diversity, the wonderful cultural expression of the same thought. That is how you actually destroy those civilizations. Whether it's Pakistan, whether if you're in the Middle East. Middle East, there are wonderful civilization. Where did Syria go? Where did Egypt go? Where did, as you rightly point, where did Iran go? So these were wonderful civilizations. The complete destruction of the original belief systems, the original cultures, has created a monochrome within, again, your Shias, your Sunnis, your Qadainis, and so many others, because it's a human nature to have some differences in expression, in whether in speech or in faith. So if you allow that to prosper, you have a wonderful garden which have different flowers, different fruits, but you cannot have a jungle where there is a rule, there is no rule, there is no rule of living, like letting other live. It is not survival of the fittest. It is celebration of smallest to biggest. When that happens, then every culture survives. Or whether it's, then you go to Europe, you have so many natives, which native culture finished. Africans similarly finished. America similarly, they were simply, there are hardly any sign. What is it? 1 or 2% people to the left who are trying to survive. But otherwise, these were the people that were thriving. They had their own culture. They had wonderful life. What is the use of progress if that actually doesn't allow you to have a happy life?
In America, in my next book, probably I'll ask you to write a forward again. But in my next book, I've documented it that how Native Americans, all rights, identity, everything removed, including their languages are not there. And
True.
India has done a wonderful job of protecting the language. I don't know whether most of the Indians appreciate that, but as I am reading
We
and
have around
researching,
2,800 languages and dialects. 2,800. We have scheduled language. I think I don't remember right away. More than 20 scheduled languages,
36,
which are in the constitution.
36,
26 or 26. Okay, 36. Yes.
and
So
then
these are recognized by the constitution
see,
as languages in which communication can happen. And there are the dialects. Within Bihar, there are the 3 dialects. Within UP, there are dialects. Within South, we say that every 6 miles a language changes. That is accepted wisdom in Bharat.
no, which is very
You
normal
have this
because
proverb in all the languages.
even as per the modern anthropology, which I don't agree most of the times because I believe Darwin's father was a monkey, mine was not. But I don't believe in anthropology. But in it's very natural that every 100 kilometers, the language, the culture changes. It's very normal, and in that way, people of India do not appreciate it. But I, sitting here from the USA, can appreciate it. That in America there
So
were
we appreciate usually it is the politics that is trying to spoil this wonderful diversity, not the people. People enjoy. We may call some slang language, we may call somebody Guju or somebody Madrasi, etc. But it's out of fun. It is not out of disrespect. So now that has become politically incorrect. But it is a normal language. You go to any IT company, see how people are, enjoying it and badgering each other and enjoying that. So this wonderful feeling of having this diversity and they are enjoying each other, pinging each other, and then having a laugh. That is possible because we don't have that delicate political correctness. That is that the forced political correctness doesn't work.
one of the mindsets in Pakistan, elite, I would say, elite of Pakistan is that they snatched the land away from India for Islam. That's what they say, and it's a very religious. We all now understand, and we all started speaking. Even the US also, we have started speaking openly that they publicly proclaim that they snatched the land away from Hindus, and they're going to snatch more land away from Hindus. And basically they are saying they want to work against the native cultures. So
But
that
that is the history, no? Mr. Aditya has said in Middle East also that is the history of Islam, and that is the history of church even till they changed their stance and they started working in a different way. That's what they did to most of the Europeans, local civilization, African civilization, American civilization. They already done it. Latin American civilization. So only now they have slowly understood that this is not the way. So they are changing their tactics, but they have imposed their uniformity in northeast of India also in a similar manner, in the way that if you are enjoying your own native culture and your tribal culture, you are isolated. When you have enough numbers, the church will force that uniformity on you. You will be asked to break away from your local friends and relatives because they have a different faith system. So this imposing of uniformity is happening even now. But the point is that the way it was done in a very, very violent manner. You, as you are writing a book, so I will not I don't know what you are going to write on that, but it's history. There is no use now talking about. You are talking of violence. Violence without violence, how forcefully the life was made miserable. I talked to you in earlier program where blacks who came to America, or the natives are not allowed to have their festivals, not allowed to have the names of their children in their tribal fashion, not to celebrate birthdays in the way they culturally did it. So slowly their cultural roots are cut off. That was done earlier. That is still being done. This is actually a violation of spirit. Forget the physical violence. That was done. Millions were killed. That is part of history. But I am more sad about the uh, unspoken, the silent oppression and suppression and cutting of roots using tools of religion, the tools of language, destroying their languages, destroying their tradition, destroying their entire, memory traditional memory, where you don't remember from where your father came, from where your forefathers came, whom did they worship, what was their recognition, what was the history, from where I come, they don't know. So this human tragedy, this intellectual genocide of the people, their belief system, is much more troublesome than the violence which can be recorded and can be shared, and which somebody can, also say, okay, I'm sorry for this violence, and we will try to change. So by the burial of young children is recorded in Canada or in USA, but that is not even the violence we talked about, which was simply butchering the innocent the Red Indians and other wonderful tribes of those countries. So to believe that only your faith system is right, only you are modern, so you have a responsibility to tame the uncivilized, is a very, very narrow mindset, and we have not yet come out of the mindset. Now the world has changed, language has changed, but still telling you what is right or wrong. Somebody sitting in American Academy is trying to tell what is right with Hindus or wrong with Hindus or Africans, and trying to impose your ideas on them, change their historical narrative, create a narrative that you feel is correct for them. Having Hindu conferences without Hindu gurus, that is a fun. An Islamic conference cannot happen without an Islamic cleric, rightly. A church discussion cannot have without knowledgeable people from church, very right. But how can you have discussions on Hindu Dharma and Hindu religions without the presence of local scholars, the Indian scholars, Hindu scholars? That is the fun. So this strange kind of behavior with natives, with people who you think are different from you, is what is a huge problem with current academic thinking, with current intellectual thinking, and also political behavior of international organizations or who try to impose their worldview.
See, European settlers were given permits to kill bisons and Native Americans on a railroad. So when the railroads were made, they could take out their guns from the windows, and anything they can fire on, they can kill. That's how the bisons and Native Americans were killed. That is one instance. And the second instance is, people do not know this American history. And the second instance is, you correctly said, the American academics, they have a view that Hinduism is animism, akin to the African culture, and it has to be replaced. That is a very firm view of all American academics, and most of the Hindu studies in North America focuses on anti-Hindu culture. They are still working on Max Muller's plans, and it is the duty of the Indian
You, you
academics
can
to.
you can worship a dog and taking care of the dog in every possible way, and you can have special love for horse, but that is not animism, because for you it is just physical affection. For us, every creature, every animal, every human being has a right to live, because they are all creation of gods. Now, to save your environment, you are slowly coming to that same idea, but you're just trying to give different names. Otherwise, this entire global climate issue, from where does it come? Because you're told that you can exploit nature because humans are superior to others. So this, and especially people who believe in a certain god. So with that in mind, you could exploit nature, you could endlessly rape nature, and then when things have come to such a sorry pass, then you say we must preserve nature. So by worshipping, we are only trying to preserve the biodiversity. It was not that we actually believed a particular lion or a cow had a god, because we say God is in every living creature. So we worship nature in every possible way. Same was done by all ancient traditions, whether African, whether European, or Americans, because they realized we are there because nature is there. Nature is our mother. This worship of nature is part of every ancient tradition. All five elements are worshipped in every ancient tradition, right from Hindus to Red Indians to Aztecs to Incas, everybody, and even blacks in Africa or Europe. All those, you look at their customs, look at their rituals. They are so similar sounding. If you listen to Slovenia local tribe singing their hymns, if you close your eyes, you might think it is a Sanskrit narration. So this worship of nature, this worship of your forefathers, and respect for elders, respect for every living being, is what had saved the earth for so many years. Why India didn't become desert, though thousands of years we are doing agriculture? Why suddenly the lands are going barren with chemical fertilizers and heavy use of machinery and killing of cattle for your own food, but growing farms for the same animals and creating this huge thermal problem? That is because we believe, the West believe, that only human being has a right to live. That is the difference between the ancient religions, natives, wherever they were, and on the other side, the church promoted thinking and later Islamic thinking was, they also felt that Allah has given everything to human, so you can just go and enjoy life. While we said that we are part of this nature, so just as a cow and a horse has a right to live, I have a right to live. And so in Shanti Mantra, we worship for the peace. You call for the peace not of human being, but four-legged animals, two-legged animals, creatures, plants, everybody. That is why we survived thousands of years without spoiling agriculture, without spoiling land, and without killing people or animals. So we had wonderful biodiversity. We had hundreds of kinds of rice. Even today, we are discovering we had about 1900 kinds of rice or so.
That's right.
Even now, we are slowly rediscovering the rice, which was stocked by genetically modified seeds. That is where the fight is. Now you say, oh, biodiversity. Now you say organic farming. Now you say, oh, you require organic fertilizers, and you have all this, very costly kind of is. So this is where we have to come back to roots of Hindu thought and stop demonizing Hindus and all other native religions who believed Mita ko Yoasin in, as you said, one of the natives or Dakotas of your US, who said Mita ko Yoasin, which we are all related. We are one family. They have to respect that thought, whether it comes from Hindu India, whether it comes from Indians or any other native. Till these people respect that rooted wisdom of the civilizations and not try to be very kind to them and change their lives, the problems of earth will not be solved.
You're very right, because the Hinduism, Sanatan Dharma, is a balance of nature, human, and Paramatma. It's a
Yeah.
balance there. You know, the one of the biggest problems which I see, the where the rights of the natives. Now, Hindus are the natives of South Asia, all South Asia, including Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Burma, Thailand. These are one culture, common culture. Language or faith has
Even
been.
China did inherit our Buddhism for 2,500 years, which went from Bharat. And that is the reason China and Bharat had no conflict at any time for so many thousands of years. Because they're indebted. There are statues of our Bodhidharma, etc. there, who took Buddha to China. They still respect that knowledge, still respect what was given to China. So they had their own civilization on which Buddha Dharma grew, and that is the reason this entire area is peaceful. There were Middle Kingdom fights and all, but overall there was no fights between different civilizations or different countries or different kingdoms. The way the violence happened in other part of the world.
Huan Sang's diary, coming to China, Huan Sang's diary about Indian traditions. Lhasa has one of the most ancient temples in China, which is in Tibet, actually, southeastern Tibet. Lhasa, they have kept it on the top floor as the most sacred text for the rest of the China. And and that is the respect given in the religious traditions, original religious tradition before the Communist Party of China. But
Yes.
over there also we see the natives like the Tibetans and the natives of China are severely discriminated against, anyone who has an independent thought. But in India, we see that all diversities are also encouraged to speak. So the
That
freedom of speech is the maximum in India, but not in China for the natives.
See, communism is also religion after all. See, communism, it should be Islamism, it should be Christianism. These are ideologies which are exclusivist, which believe only they are right, everything else is wrong. Vis-a-vis Bharat, which says ekam sat vipra bodha vadanti, that is one truth, is spoken differently by different scholars and different people who know. So when this thought comes, you will find we respect diversity, we respect other viewpoints. And if you say that only I am right, every other person is wrong, whether it's communism or Islamism or Christianism, that is where the problem is. There is no Hinduism. It's Hindu Dharma. It is a philosophy. It is not an ism. So this reversing of this entire meaning of ism is where the problem lies.
So in coming back to the natives, in South America. Now, in South America, also the natives have been severely discriminated, and everything started in the 6th century. 6th century, when the papal bull was introduced, where the church, Catholic Church, which took over the Roman Empire, was running out of money, and they asked Spaniards and Portuguese to collect money on their behalf, and even the English, Irish were mostly Catholics. So that's where the entire colonization actually started, but it
Yeah,
became
in fact,
worse.
there is a fact. I forget the name. I was reading a book where it's in, I think, 18th century, where the Pope decided which area will be invaded by which particular nation. So Dutch, the French, the Portuguese, and the British were given certain areas on contract as if they own the earth, and that is how you find certain colonies dominated by certain countries, and others are dominated by certain countries. So this was decided by Pope. Just imagine, and we say, okay, the religion has nothing to do with the imperialism. That's not true.
And the word like,
Imperialism used religion to expand, and religion used imperialism on their shoulder to expand their own belief system. That is how they exploited different countries.
in India also, they entered from the point of view of civilizing Indians. It was a very demeaning view, which is still going on.
That is the claim now. That is not true. That is the claim later on. White man's burden idea came much more later. It was a time when they came, they did not realize that what is their knowledge. They were puzzled, they were surprised, they were shocked. How we treat people. We have plastic surgery, we have wonderful medicinal system, we have wonderful metallurgy, we have wonderful astronomy. They were stunned. They are stunned by the education system of India itself. Having got stunned, they knew that unless that is killed, they cannot rule over India. So that is when Macaulay came in, and that is how they realized that they have to kill the education system, the knowledge system of Bharat, if they have to rule India. That is how this white man burdens issue came. Before that, they knew they were much more inferior. So then they used Jesus there to put in the word that we are superior and all that. So Jesus was used to stop the local belief system, to oppress it, and use that religion as part of expansionism. That is how it happened in Northeast, it happened in South. Somehow India is too big and too strong for them to completely overrun. That is how we survived, because of there are continuous resistance right from the Mughal invasion. Continuously, India was never peacefully run by any empire continuously for a long period of time. There are always rebellions, some part or the other, and that is how we survived. Otherwise, if they had been so powerful, how would India survive? How would Hindu Dharma survive? It survived because of its innate strength, because it used various means to survive. Whether there is Bhakti movement, whether it was valor of Kshatriya, of various kings of every kind, whether it's valor of the Vanvasis, Janajatis, or tribal people, forest dwellers, various tribes of Bharat, right from northeast to middle of India to south, where they continuously fought. Bhil, Santhas, these are people, Birsa Munda, they fought against the church, they fought against British for years together. So that is how they survived. They hid their books, they hid their knowledge. It was still taken away. So all these are part of history now. Only thing is, we are trying, as you started from the program, that till Modi ji actually proclaimed that this is an atrocity day, we even refuse to believe there is an atrocity. See, people like Audrey Tushke, and you have people like Wendy who believe that we were happily living with Mughal kings and they were very benign on us. They made more temples than they destroyed the temples. All these funny stories and an insult to the natives of Bharat is something that has to be corrected. And that can be corrected only by more assertive academics, more assertive research, and much more deeper understanding of what actually happened.
Most of these authors that you take, I don't even want to dignify them by taking their name, but most of the names that you took, they are the famous
Because these are the
Indologists.
flag bearers of our the study of Hindology and Indian history, unfortunately.
Most
And
of
they are
the
being pampered by the academics, by the universities. I am taking the name, so university should know that these are people who start with an inherent bias.
so most of
Unless
these
we name them and shame them and tell people that this is not the true history, this is not a true story, please go back and read our own history books written by Indians, not by Sanghis or RSS people or Hindu people. These are written by hardcore academics. Just before the entire system was hijacked by the Marxist and people who were simply following British dictats. See, I always say British had a reason. They wanted to rule their colonies, so they had to show them in poor light. But why did we follow the same? We are on the eve of independence of Bharat. We are starting 75th year of independence. So whether we truly had Swaraj, our own Raj, Swatantra, our own methodologies, our own processes, and where we picked up our own tradition of democracy way back from Maurya Empire, 4 BC. We had Janapadas, we had local democracy, direct democracy, and elected people. From rather than choosing them there as our models, we started from believing that we had nothing. We are doing some British, picking up some British model and being very liberal about it. That's not true. So we started on a wrong note, and today, after 75 years, we are still told that what is wrong with us. And though knowing that we have much better tools of knowledge and much better advanced systems we had, I am not saying go back to 16th century, 15th century, but accept mathematical truths, accept scientific truths, and we should accept first of all, forget best. When we have an education system accepting these truths and then moving ahead with confidence, we will have the same kind of inferiority complex. Only some top percentile who will score well go to Western world and show their brains off, show their intellect off, but with a weakness saying that, okay, but we come from a country which is backward, etc., etc. That is where we have to come out of the inferiority complex. That is where our Swaraj, our independent, our Swatantrata is very important for us, which happens tomorrow. And that is why we need to change this narrative.
So most of the Indologists in the Western university sphere have converted into anti anti-native movements, anti-Hindu movements. Who are the natives? Like the Indologists names you took, Wendy Doniger and Audrey Trushke. These people are the symbols or the symptoms of a bigger plague. I would say the
Yes,
plague in the
that's right.
Western academy. They are the Western education system, whether it's in Oxford or the word Oxford comes from where the bulls used to pass the shit. That was the actual name of the meaning of the place called Oxford, and which is it is still continuing till date, and it has become even worse today because the Indian Indologists follow these Western Indologists, and I was shocked to see their books in every bookshelf at every single airport in India.
It's very simple because they have wonderful, what you call as a remuneration system, wonderful reimbursement system in cash and kind. What do you get by, looking at Indian worldview? What I call Bharat-centric view. Or I would say that rather than looking at India from Greenwich line, if you look at from the Mahakal line of Ujjain, where the origin of time was discovered, the earth, the entire astronomy, the calculation of time was picked up. Unless we look at India from the zero timeline of India, we will end up looking at India from outside. When you look at India from the Western perspective, things will not change. So those people who want to have reward system, they will follow them. I know of people who went there, local Indians whose daughters and sons wanted to pursue Indology or Indian history, were simply denied the chance, and they were insulted because they said which was different from what these people think. So this control on reward system is what pushes these people to follow what Rajiv Malhotra called brown sepoys into following that line. If you are just like in India today, if you abuse Modi, immediately are celebrated world over, and you are given various seminars, 5-star seminars, jobs, writing articles in Western journals where you make good money compared to what you get in India. So the advantages of following these groupies is much more than looking at the Indian sitting in India and doing her tapas without the kind of rewards other get. So that is the reward system which actually has distorted this entire research and academic areas.
Very true, because the Western grants and you'll be shocked to know that the Indian Americans spent, now few individuals I'm talking about, more than $1 billion in American academic system to actually fund these activities. These the Indian Americans have done. I wouldn't like to name. I know most of those people who have donated such large amounts of money. Only thing they get is a name on the wall. That's it.
So
And
this again proves, Aditya, what they are doing that inferiority complex they carried from India. They want to be recognized by whites. They don't want to get recognized as Indians who have been able to stand on their feet and have made money and have made name there. They want to recognize by those people, so they will do the same thing. Similarly, even our industrialists who got educated in foreign university will give millions to those universities, not to the place of their birth, where we require much better education system, which has been totally destroyed by British, and we have not been able to rebuild it because of strange ideas, whatever. We can't get into that in this discussion. So this sense of inferiority, rightly put into our heads by a Macaulay education system, still surviving, and then the urge to be recognized because of this inferiority they carry in their mind is what is making these things happen. Otherwise, what stops them from starting an institution which they fund totally and which is totally objectively doing research on Bharat, on any other aspect of the world, whether it's Africa or even Europe, for example? What happened to those civilizations? They can do it. They have got enough money. So why hanker after the institutions which you know are actually having a very biased worldview?
A new myth is being spread in the American academic circles is that the Bhagavad Gita, Bible, and Quran, they came at the same time. That is the new theory now which is being propounded. And there's another aspect, another thing which is being told is animism and totemism. Edward Tyler, and I don't want to call any of them sir because they're not sir. They're just a title given by the British imperialists. The Edward Tyler is the one who proposed it, and what they actually mean is that the actual connotation of this word is animism is that monotheism is better than pantheism. Now, this is the biggest sin. I call it the one book syndrome. And
No, but point is, it is not question of monotheism. We are not saying what does Hindu Dharma say? It says there is one supreme truth, but viewed differently by different people. Because who created God? Who created God's image? Human being. God didn't say I am there and I'm going to create. Whoever says that I come from God and I am his son or prophet of God is his claim. God never came down to say that. So we human beings recognize that supreme power which has created this entire earth, or not just earth, in fact, we say entire universe. So we give it a name, a shape, or different way of looking at it, but we say there is one supreme truth. There is no difference between different belief systems on that. But believe that only one form is correct and there is no form to God. We love our God, so we give it a form, but we know it's certainly the same supreme truth. So Mexican pluralism or multiple way of looking at supreme God and comparing to monotheism of the Western religion, the Christianity or Islam or Abrahamic religions, it is misreading, entirely, totally misreading. I am not a dharmic scholar, but to say that because we worship the same supreme truth in different ways, that's human nature. Why do Christians worship Jesus' image? They don't believe in God as an image. Why do they cross in their? Why do they put cross in their altar or in their necks? Because they need some symbol. So then, mother in India, because we worship Mother, suddenly Mother Mary becomes bigger than Jesus, and have huge statues of Mother Mary in different names, wearing saris and all that. Because ultimately, human being wants to hankers for some form in which he believes or she believes. In Islam, they will not have any shape of Allah, but they have photos of Kaaba, Medina, Kaaba, etc. in their homes. Is it not true? They have different inscriptions framed in their home. Why? Because who ultimately human being needs some shape, somebody else. You can remember your father and your mother. Why do you put photographs? Are you sure that the photograph you have of our great grandfather is true photograph? Nobody knows. Somebody passed on a painting and said, this painting is of Maharaja XYZ or my great grandfather. Because we love our great grandfather, we say, okay, this is the image. This is what Vivekananda experimented with the people who said, why do you have, some drawing or some image of the God? Because ultimately you need something to concentrate on, to put your mind focus on. So either we have different gods and different names, knowing that they are all one, or you have some other image, some cross, some Jesus, some Mother Mary, or some Makkah, Medina photographed in your drawing room, because you ultimately want to have some memory of that wonderful God, that wonderful supreme being and you worship that. Is it not true that you kiss cross or you touch cross with reverence in your forehead? There is no need, no? Because you don't give shape to God. You say God has no shape. Don't even give it a shape. They say that. But then you go to sites where Jesus or ostensibly taken on a horse to heavens. That is not superstition. That is logical. That is not a myth. A prophet going on flying horse is not a myth. So this strange thing you pointed out, that is because there is some sense of foolish superiority complex or exclusivity which you want to impose on others because you fear the unknown. You fear Hindu Dharma, you fear that superior understanding of the supreme being. So I say superior not out of superiority complex, but much more varied, much more finely tuned to human mind. Much more evolved system which any human can identify with. You have Buddha said there is no God, but we worship Buddha's statues. We say Mahavir nearly was, in fact, Jainism is supposed to be, non-believer, and he said no Murti, but we worship the Murti of Mahavir. Because this is true of every human being, that you need some focus and you need that sense of reverence for somebody. It could be your guru, it could be your son, somebody whom you believe in, or some temple, or some image of that God in your mind. That is all that is to it. But we all believe in one supreme being, but that is not the only way. It is not the only way. That is also way that you have a way of looking at supreme being. We have different way of looking at supreme being, whether natives of Dakota or natives of Incas or natives of Black Africa or of Europe or Bharat. We all have a way of looking at Godhood in a much more reverent way than saying God has given me all, I'm going to exploit everybody because God has given me the right. God has created everybody, no? Creature, nature, everything is created by God or supreme being, whatever you call it, the supreme power. So who has told you that you as being part of that creation of God has right to destroy other creations? God never said that. But we, the people who use God to create a imperialistic society, an expansionist society, supremacist society, they gave that particular narrative to what they believe God told them. We never say God told us to finish other civilizations, to finish other belief system. God said everybody has a right of looking at God in a different way. Whether it Gita, to say that Gita, Bible, Quran came at the same time, that is falsifying your own history. The Bible came from Torah. From Bible and Torah came Quran. They accepted for same stories, different names. You may say this was given by X, Y, Z. That's their belief system. I don't want to insult that. I don't want to question that. But if you read the stories, anybody, any scholar doing that study will tell you the same thing.
Scholars don't study those books. Scholars reject those
And
books.
we have no one book. Because we believe everybody gets close to Godhood by its own methods. You may have a guru, you may not have a guru, you may search inside your mind, or you may go to Himalayas, you may look at a God and finally get merged with that God, or you have knowledge, or you have bhakti. And it is not a blind bhakti. So you say that when you have firm faith in Jesus or Allah, then it is the only way, and that is the devotion faith they demand without any logical questioning. But when I say bhakti marg, you say that's superstition. So this strange way of trying to impose your views on others is what has created all the mess, all the sadness in the world, all the wars, all the battles. Major destruction was done in the name of belief systems, which Bharat never did. So that is the thing that we must understand.
No, most of these type of people were always existing even during Mahabharata time also, and that's why the wars were constantly raised by the Pandavas and their children.
But see, these wars were never for faith. They were wars for righteousness. They were right for
Righteousness,
ethical
Dharma.
values and
Yes,
moral values and dharma. They were never fought because of Krishna is lesser God than my Shiva. That was not the
right.
fight.
That is not the fight. So the
That was not
most,
fight. Even Rakshas, Asuras believed in the same God.
yes,
They went and complained to the same God, I am not getting justice. So if that is so they will go to Shiva, Ravan will go to Shiva, and others, Ram will also go to Bhagwan Shiv. So understand this beauty, that Despite none of that was a war for of superior supremacy of any particular faith. That is a war of righteousness, dharma. Whenever it happened, Ram destroyed Ravan because of his unrighteous behavior,
That's
immoral
right.
behavior.
That's right.
Otherwise, he was living happily. Everybody is living happily.
You know, what in Mahabharata time happened, it is needed also again for India to rise again and install dharma in most of those places, because even in the India's neighborhood, Afghanistan, Pakistan, they are lawless society today. Bangladesh is partly lawless, but partly because of India's influence is still there. India stood for blacks in Africa, South Africa. India was the first nation to fight for the rights of the blacks. And that was a great dharmic support, I would say. And India, there is a big responsibility on Indian leadership to protect the rights of the natives in America, natives in South America, and natives in Europe also. Sushma Swaraj, I met her during the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas in Varanasi a couple of years back, and I congratulated her on one thing. We had only conversation about Romanis, Romani, the natives of Europe.
Right.
And I thanked her in 2016 when she gave a statement to protect the rights or recognize them as Hindus. Today, Yazidis, Kurds, and Romanis, they look up to India, and including South Americans, Chilean natives of Chilean, Bolivia, Argentina, and who all feel connected to India, including Native Americans, like you mentioned, Dakota tribe. So India needs to
You
not just
remember
stand.
uh, one of the talks I talked about International Center for Cultural Studies in India,
That's
which
right.
has already started the process way back in 2003, and as part of the initial process, when people from 400 editions from nearly 34 countries came to Bharat, and they still come every 3 years. So at the non-official level, non-government level, Bharatiyas have taken the responsibility, Indians have taken the responsibility, Hindu civilization has taken the responsibility of giving support to all these indigenous and native faiths and make them strong, make them help survive, because these are the elements, agents of harmony. These are not agents of disharmony or something that disturbs the uniformity of the Islamic or the Christian world. These are the elements that create the beauty. They are the elements that tell you that okay, world has to respect various faiths and various the nature itself. So this process started, and I talked about the statement they made that Hindu Dharma is the big ship behind which our small boats will survive and pass in this civilized world. Others will try to destroy us. So we have faith only in Hindu Dharma and Bharat that is going to protect us and take us through and help us thrive and survive. So that feeling of that faith, as you rightly pointed out, has already begun at people's level. It has to begin at the government level. And I think the way this government has responded to various disasters world over and helped every country wherever required tells us India takes its responsibility seriously.
No, India has done a great work in Security Council also on the maritime policy, which was very much needed. And also the Philippines, Aborigines of Australia, and I have a lot of viewers over there in Australia who regularly watch this show, and some of you are watching. Australians in US, you're watching, but then you can forward later on. And also in Indonesia and the natives of Indonesia, natives of Malaysia, they all look up to India to protect their rights, because there is nobody speaking for them in the international fora. Nobody talks about them in Latin. There is not a single United Nations Commission on the rights of natives. And
Imagine, Aditya, imagine that first meeting of protection to natives happened in 1982 in UN, not before that. After World War was over, already colonial powers had actually destroyed most of the civilization. At that time it happened. In India, right at the outset of the independence, we had special act to protect the rights and to avoid discrimination of our forest brethren, whom we call Janjatis and Vanvasis. For them, though they were part of the society, they were exploited very badly and oppressed badly by the British and the church. So the first law at the pass of the constitution itself, we had these laws for protecting them in every possible way, for education, for jobs, for their culture. This happened in India much before UN took it up. So when somebody talks about India, let them understand this also.
Yeah, India, people look up to India, and because India is the only country which has taken issues which are relevant to the people's heart, like the maritime issue. Nobody had no permanent member of Security Council would have done it. Nobody, but India took it up under their presidentship. And like just like non-aligned movement, India was the leader. I think there's another movement needed, is the native movement. And through you, and I don't have much reach, you have much bigger reach than me, but the we want to appeal to the Indian politicians at the international fora. See, one of the problems is Indian politicians need to look outside more than inside all the time. They fight in the parliament, but instead of that, they should fight for the rights of the whole world. That is needed, and that is what American politicians do. And America has a mantra: the duck which quacks the loudest gets the cracker. And that's why they talk too much like a duck: quack, 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 quack. No meaning, but they do that. So somewhere that is also needed. More research is needed from the Indian universities. As a private researcher, I can write one or two books, but I cannot set up a department, but I need help over there. So we need that. What is your
That's
view
why
on
I
that?
said that the Indians in America need to set up an institution itself. They have enough funds rather than trying to get a chair in their name or their father's name in different universities. That is the requirement. Hinduness of America started that process. I hope it grows into a multi-purpose huge university, and which it can help this kind of researches.
Thank you so much, Ratanji. As usual, very involved discussion. And thank you
Thank you.
for all the people
Thank
who
you.
are watching it live. Namaste.
Thank you.